In the heart of Columbus, Ohio, a mystery lingers like a ghost in the dark, haunting the shadows of the city's vibrant nightlife. The story of Brian Schaffer begins on a cool spring evening, March 31st, 2006, a night that would forever remain shrouded in uncertainty and fear. Brian, a 27-year-old medical student at Ohio State University, was a man seemingly on the verge of a bright future. Yet, beneath the surface of his promising life, there lay wounds that no one could see but that festered in the depths of his soul. Just 3 weeks before this fateful night, Brian had lost his mother to cancer. The grief weighed heavily on him, casting a shadow over his otherwise lively demeanor. It was spring break, and while most of his peers were preparing to unwind, Brian's mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. He and his girlfriend, Alexis, had plans to escape to Miami, a brief respite from the whirlwind of medical school and the sorrow that had recently enveloped his life. There were whispers that Brian might even propose to Alexis during this trip, a moment of joy amidst the lingering sadness. That evening, Brian decided to blow off some steam with his friend Clint Florence. They began their night bar hopping, the city's neon lights reflecting off the wet streets as they moved from one crowded bar to another, each shot of liquor dulling the edge of reality just a little bit more. By midnight, the two friends, along with another acquaintance, Meredith, found themselves at the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a popular haunt for students and locals alike. The bar, tucked away in a less savory part of town, was a maze of flashing lights and loud music, a place where the line between revelry and danger was often blurred. As the clock ticked closer to the early hours of April 1st, Brian was seen on the bar's security camera, smiling and chatting with two women outside the entrance. The footage showed him walking back towards the entrance, a slight sway in his step, perhaps from the alcohol, perhaps from something more sinister. He re-entered the bar at 1:55 a.m., and that was the last time anyone saw him. What happened next has baffled investigators and armchair detectives alike for years. Despite the presence of multiple security cameras covering every exit, Brian was never seen leaving the bar. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The bar's only other exit led to a hazardous construction site, a place where even the most sober individual would struggle to navigate safely. Yet, no trace of Brian was ever found there, or anywhere else for that matter. The hours turned into days, and when Brian failed to show up for his flight to Miami, his girlfriend Alexis knew something was terribly wrong. The police were called and a search ensued, but it quickly became clear that this was no ordinary disappearance. The bar's security footage was scrutinized frame by frame, but there was nothing. No sign of Brian leaving, no indication of foul play, just the inexplicable void where a man had once been. As the days turned into weeks, the search expanded beyond the bar. The police scoured the city's underbelly, dumpsters, sewers, alleyways, places where the lost and the damned are often found. But there was nothing. Even the K9 units, with their noses keenly tuned to the scent of the missing, found no trace of Brian. It was as if the city itself had swallowed him whole, hiding him in its dark recesses where no light could reach. Rumors began to spread, each one more unsettling than the last. Some whispered that Brian had staged his own disappearance, that the grief over his mother's death had driven him to abandon his life and start anew. Others spoke of darker forces at play, of malevolent spirits that haunted the old buildings and dark corners of the city, claiming the souls of those who dared to walk alone at night. And then there were those who believed that Brian had met with foul play, that someone in the bar had seen his vulnerability and lured him into a trap from which he could not escape. One of the most chilling theories was linked to the Smiley Face Killer, a supposed serial murderer or group of killers believed to target young men in their prime, leaving their bodies near bodies of water. Though no body was ever found, Brian's disappearance fit the pattern, vanished after a night of drinking, No trace left behind, no closure for those who loved him. In the months following his disappearance, Alexis continued to call Brian's phone, hoping against hope that he would answer. Each time, the call went straight to voicemail, until one night in September when the phone rang. Her heart leaped with hope, only to have it dashed when the call went unanswered and the phone pinged a tower miles away. It was a cruel glitch, a ghostly reminder that Brian was gone, and no one knew where. The mystery deepened when, 2 years later, Brian's father, Randy, was tragically killed by a falling tree limb during a windstorm. Some saw this as a cruel twist of fate, others as a sign, an omen that the Schaffer family was cursed. In an online condolence book, someone claiming to be Brian wrote, "To Dad, love Brian, U.S. Virgin Islands." It was later revealed to be a hoax, another cruel joke in a story already steeped in sorrow. To this day, Brian Schaffer's disappearance remains unsolved. The bar where he was last seen has since closed, its neon lights extinguished, its patrons moved on. But the mystery lingers, like a ghost haunting the dark corners of Columbus, whispering in the night, asking the question that no one can answer: what happened to Brian Schaffer? The dense, ancient woods of Brant Lake, New York, have long held secrets within their shadows. They whisper of lost souls and forgotten tragedies, their stories carried on the wind that rustles through the leaves. Among these tales is the unsettling disappearance of Tom Messick, an 82-year-old veteran, hunter, and survival expert, who vanished without a trace on November 15, 2015. Tom was not just any man, he was a survivor, a man who had faced death and come out the other side. In his younger years, he had served as a paratrooper in the prestigious 82nd Airborne Division during World War II. An explosion had taken his eye, half his hearing, and nearly his life, but Tom was not one to be easily defeated. He wore his scars with pride, symbols of a life lived on the edge, a life that seemed to defy the odds at every turn. In his later years, Tom had turned to the wilderness for solace. He became an avid hunter and outdoorsman, teaching survival skills to those eager to learn. The woods were his sanctuary, a place where he felt most alive, where the noise of the modern world faded away, leaving only the quiet rhythm of nature. But those same woods which had offered him so much peace would become the stage for his final mysterious act. The day started like any other. Tom, along with 6 friends and family members, had set out for an annual hunting trip, a tradition that had spanned more than 5 decades. This year, they chose a new location, Lily Pond near Brant Lake, a place they had never hunted before. The air was crisp with the bite of late autumn, the ground covered in a thick blanket of leaves that crunched underfoot as they made their way into the forest. Because of his age and health, Tom's role in the hunt was different from the others. He could no longer track deer through the dense underbrush, so instead, he was stationed at a spot near an old tree stump where he would wait for the others to drive the deer towards him. It was a plan they had used many times before, one that had always worked. But as the hours passed, the forest began to change. The vibrant sounds of wildlife, birds chirping, squirrels rustling in the leaves, gradually faded away, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. the wind picked up, whispering through the trees, carrying with it a sense of unease. The other men in the group, stationed nearby, began to feel the weight of the stillness pressing down on them, as if the woods themselves were watching, waiting. When the younger men returned to Tom's location after an hour of searching for deer, they found the tree stump where he had been sitting empty. At first, they thought he might have wandered off to relieve himself or check out a noise in the distance. But as they called his name and received no answer, their concern grew. Tom was deaf in one ear, but he had always been responsive to their calls. The fact that he wasn't answering now sent a chill down their spines. As the sky began to darken, the hunters realized that Tom was indeed gone. They fired their guns into the air and used their buggies to guide him back, but all to no avail. The search began, but the more they searched, the more frightened they became. Tom was a man who knew the woods, a man who did not easily get lost. But no matter how hard they searched, no trace of him was ever found. The search for Tom Messick became one of the most valuable in the history of the Adirondacks. Thang was equipped with thermal imaging cameras, bloodhounds, and hundreds of volunteers who quickly covered the area. But no matter how carefully they searched, they found no sign of Tom. The woods, with their eerie silence, seemed to have held him forever. Word began to spread of the strange noises and the sudden silence of the woods that day. Some say Tom encountered some supernatural force, something beyond human understanding, but no one can be sure what happened to him. Tom Messick's disappearance has become one of the unsolved mysteries of the Adirondacks, a story that leaves listeners in awe every time it is told. The Frog Boys incident is one of South Korea's most haunting mysteries. On March 26, 1991, while most of the country was focused on the first local elections in 30 years, a group of 5 boys from a village near Daegu had plans of their own. They decided to use this rare day off to go frog hunting in the mountains. The boys, aged 9 to 13, included Cheol-won, Ho-yeon, Seong-ho, Jae-won, and Young-gyu, who were close friends, having grown up together in the small village. Little did they know that this would be their last day together. That morning, the boys left home early, full of energy and excitement. Cheol-won, the eldest, went back home to grab an extra jacket because it was a cold day, and quickly rejoined his friends. They did not tell their families their exact plans, and just a few hours after they left the village, worry began to creep into the hearts of their parents. When the boys did not return home on time, their parents started searching around Mount Waryong, where the boys often played. As fear grew, the families reported the boys' disappearance to the police. Initially, the police dismissed the boys' disappearance as child's play, believing they would soon return after having had enough fun. But as time passed with no sign of the boys, the parents grew desperate. They appealed for help from the media, but the press at the time was preoccupied with the election and paid little attention to the missing boys. A week after the boys disappeared, the story finally began to capture the public's attention. By this time, anxiety had turned into panic. A massive search operation involving thousands of people was launched, from police forces to volunteers. The search included scouring dense forests, lakes, and even bus stations. but no trace of the boys was found. As time passed, despair grew as chilling theories and rumors began to spread. Some believed the boys had been kidnapped by a mysterious force, while others thought they had met with a horrific accident. The situation reached a peak when a prank call, allegedly from one of the boys, was made during a live television broadcast, shaking the entire nation. However, that brief moment of hope was quickly dashed when the call was confirmed to be a cruel joke. Many years after the tragic disappearance of the 5 boys on September 26, 2002, an event occurred that would reignite the nation's attention on the case. 2 men were foraging for acorns on the slopes of Mount Waryong, a place that had once been the backdrop for endless searches, now largely forgotten by the public. As they moved through the dense underbrush, something unusual caught their eye: a human skeleton partially protruding from the earth. The initial shock of the discovery quickly turned into dread as they realized they had likely stumbled upon the remains of the long-lost frog boys. The police were called to the scene immediately, and what they uncovered would become the subject of speculation and sorrow for years to come. The skeletal remains of all 5 boys were found buried in shallow graves close together, their bones intertwined as if in a final act of unity. But it was the state of the remains that fueled the most disturbing theories. 3 of the boys' skulls showed clear signs of trauma, fractures that suggested they had been struck with great force, possibly from a blunt object or even gunfire. Additionally, investigators discovered bullets and shell casings near the bodies, further complicating the narrative of what might have happened on that fateful day in 1991. The location of the boys' graves added another layer of suspicion to the already chilling discovery. The site was disturbingly close to a military shooting range, an area known for live-fire drills and exercises. This proximity led many to speculate that the boys could have inadvertently wandered into the range during a practice session and were accidentally killed by stray bullets. However, the exact circumstances of their deaths remained shrouded in mystery. Despite these plausible theories, no comprehensive investigation was conducted to confirm whether a military accident was responsible for the boys' deaths. The authorities' apparent reluctance to delve deeper into this possibility fueled outrage among the public and deepened the family's grief. The parents, driven by an unyielding need for justice and answers, did not remain silent. They repeatedly brought lawsuits against the police, accusing them of gross negligence and mishandling the investigation from the very beginning. They argued that the boys' lives could have been saved had the search and investigation been taken more seriously from the outset. Despite their efforts, the legal system provided no solace. The lawsuits were dismissed, and the case remained unresolved, leaving the families with more questions than answers. The tragedy of the Frog Boys has since become a haunting chapter in South Korea's history, a reminder of the fragility of life and the pain of unanswered questions. To this day, the case remains unsolved, a cold case that continues to resonate deeply with the South Korean public. The boys were laid to rest together in a shared grave, a poignant symbol of their lifelong friendship and the enduring mystery that surrounded their deaths. Just as they were inseparable in life, they remained together in death, bound not only by their tragic fate, but also by the secrets that have never been fully uncovered. The story of the Frog Boys, with all its unanswered questions and lingering suspicions, continues to be a source of sorrow and speculation, a mystery that refuses to fade from the nation's collective memory.